The wind hit the cabin like a living thing, clawing at the shutters and dragging long howls across the valley. Yet it wasn't the storm that woke Luke Harland. It was the knock. 3 slow, hollow raps that shouldn't have been possible on a night when no sane soul would be out on the range. Luke slid from his cot, boots thudding on the floorboards, his hand already reaching for the rifle leaning by the door. As a rancher, and a single father besides, he had learned the hard way that trouble rarely waited for daylight. But when he cracked the door open, he didn't find a man with a gun, or a traveler begging shelter. Instead, lying on the porch half covered in snow, was an envelope, edges curled, ink smeared, tied with a piece of red yarn like a child's keepsake. And on the front, in shaky pencil letters, were 5 words that didn't belong to anyone he knew, to any kind soul. Please. Luke brought it inside, brushing snowflakes from his beard as the fire hissed behind him. He turned the envelope over, checking for a name, a clue, anything, but it held no stamp, no seal, no return address, not even the faint scent of perfume or dust that might suggest who had touched it last. Just that trembling handwriting, carved in desperation. His daughter, little Willow, stirred from her small bed near the hearth. "Papa, who's here?" she murmured, rubbing her eyes. Luke hid the unease in his chest with a soft smile. "No one, sweetheart, just the wind playing tricks." But the wind didn't leave letters, and no rider had approached. He would have heard hooves long before footsteps. Something was wrong. He slid his thumb under the flap and unfolded the note inside. The words nearly stopped his breath. "I am lost in the foothills. I cannot go farther. If you find this, please, help me. My name is Alara. I don't want to die." Fear rippled through him, fear for a stranger, but also fear of what duty might cost him. The storm outside was the kind that swallowed men whole. Trails disappeared under fresh drifts, and even seasoned ranch hands wouldn't dare ride into the dark. But Luke had always been the sort who couldn't ignore a plea for help. Maybe it came from losing his wife too young, maybe from raising Willow alone, maybe from carrying too many regrets on his back like a pack mule. Whatever the reason, the thought of someone out there, freezing, waiting on a miracle that would never come unless he provided it, gnawed at his conscience like a coyote on bone. Willow watched him with wide, sleepy eyes. "Papa, someone's hurt." Luke knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "Maybe," he admitted, "and we're the nearest souls to these mountains." Willow didn't hesitate, ever did. "Then we gotta help Em. Mama would have wanted that." The girl's simple certainty struck him harder than any bullet. Luke strapped on his coat, checked the lantern, and threw 2 extra logs in the fire. "Stay inside. Don't open this door for no one but me," he told her, voice firm. The storm growled outside like a wounded bear. Willow nodded bravely, clutching her little blanket. Luke saddled Rusty, his oldest, steadiest, horse hands moving fast, though the cold bit at his fingertips. Snow stung his face and turned the yard white with the cruel speed only high-country storms possessed. The letter said foothills, but that covered miles of broken land, ravines, bluffs, frozen creeks. He didn't know where Alara had come from or how she'd crossed paths with his porch, but he knew one thing: she'd run out of time the moment her strength failed. Lantern swinging from the saddle horn, Luke pressed his boots into the stirrups and rode into the white void, following nothing but instinct and the thin thread of hope that it wasn't too late. The world became a blur of snow and black pine silhouettes as Luke climbed toward the foothills. The wind battered him from the north, sharp enough to cut through his coat. Rusty plodded steadily, muscles tight beneath the saddle, snorting clouds of steam that vanished into the darkness. Luke traced the ridgeline by memory, recalling old trapper paths and cattle trails. Where would a woman, alone and freezing, seek shelter? A place out of the wind, maybe near the rock overhangs or the shallow caves where deer sometimes bedded down. Twice he stopped, lantern held high, listening for cries that never came. Only the storm answered, flinging its icy roar down the slopes. Luke's thoughts circled the letter. How had it reached his porch? Had Alara crawled through the snow? Had someone delivered it on her behalf? He scanned the ground for tracks, but the storm had eaten every sign clean. "Just keep talking, Alara," he muttered under his breath. "Let your voice carry. Give me something to follow." The first sign came near the widow's bluff trail, a scrap of red yarn fluttering from the branch of a juniper, tied deliberately, as if left to mark a path. Luke's heart thudded. He guided Rusty closer, plucked the frozen strand, and spotted another tied to a fallen log a dozen yards up. The storm tried to bury them, but not fast enough. "Smart girl," he whispered. "You didn't lay down and wait. You fought." He urged Rusty onward, tracking the faint trail of crimson markers through the dark. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Then he saw boot prints, softened by snow but unmistakable, and beside them a handprint, fingers splayed, pressed into the drift like someone had fallen to one knee. Luke swung down from the saddle and pressed his glove into the impression, still fresh. His breath fogged the air. He called, voice cracking through the storm. "If you can hear me, call out." A faint sound answered him, so fragile he nearly believed he imagined it. Not a word, more like a whimper carried by the wind. Luke's pulse hammered as he climbed the slope on foot, lantern high. He found her beneath a jut of rock, half buried in snow, as though the mountain had tried to claim her. Her coat was torn, her face pale as moonlight, lashes crusted with ice. She stared at him through barely open eyes, pleading, terrified, and so tired. He breathed. Her cracked lips moved. You came." Luke dropped to his knees beside her, brushing snow from her hair. "Got your letter. Took me long enough, but I'm here now." She shook violently, the shiver of a body losing its grip on warmth. Luke didn't waste a second. He wrapped her in his coat, lifted her carefully into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, light enough to scare him. "Stay with me," he murmured as he carried her to Rusty. "My little girl's waiting back home. Fire's warm. You'll make it. Just stay awake." By the time Luke settled her in the saddle before him and turned back toward the cabin, the storm had tightened its grip, throwing sheets of snow against them. Rusty pushed forward with heroic stubbornness, hooves crunching through drifts that reached nearly to his belly. Luke kept one arm around Elara, steadying her as she drifted in and out of consciousness. Every few minutes he forced her to answer him name, hometown, anything just to keep her tethered. But her words grew softer, slower. Her body slumped, and miles still lay between them and home. Luke's jaw clenched. He leaned close to her ear. "Don't you give up," he growled softly. "You sent a letter to any kind soul. Well, you found one, and I ain't losing you out here." The night swallowed his voice, the cold creeping like a thief through his coat butt. He held her tighter, refusing to surrender. Somewhere behind the storm waited his cabin, his daughter, warm, light, and hope, and he would reach them or die trying. By the time Luke spotted the faint orange glow of the cabin through the blizzard, Elara had gone limp in his arms more than once. Each time, he'd shaken her gently, spoken to her with that steady, graveled deep voice he used when Willow had nightmares, anchoring, warm, impossible to ignore. But the storm was cruel, and Elara was slipping fast. Rusty staggered into the yard like a weary soldier home from the front. Luke hustled from the saddle, boots sinking deep into the snow, and pulled Elara down with him, cradling her against his chest. The cabin door burst open before he reached it. Willow stood there, cheeks flushed from the fire's heat, fear widening her eyes. Papa Luke didn't waste breath answering, "Blankets, sweetheart. As many as you can carry." He pushed through the door, the warmth inside hitting him like a hammer. Elara's weight, frail and frightening in his arms. He laid her near the hearth on a pile of thick quilts. Willow dragged over. The fire snapped, casting gold light across Elara's face, pale, pinched, but alive. Luke stripped off her frozen coat, his fingers working fast, despite the tremor running through them. Willow knelt opposite him, rubbing Elara's hands between her own small palms. "She's cold, Papa," she whispered. "Real cold." Luke nodded grimly, pulling the last scrap of ice-crusted cloth away. "She's been out in it too long, but she's here now." He warmed water on the stove, pressing the steaming mug to Elara's lips. She didn't drink at first, her head lolled sideways. Luke steadied her gently, murmuring, "Come on now, you didn't come all this way to quit." Slowly, like a soul dragged back from the edge, she sipped. Minutes passed before her eyes opened fully blue as winter sky, rimmed red with exhaustion. She blinked at the room, at the fire, at Willow's small hand still clutching hers, and confusion flickered across her features. "Where am I?" she breathed. Luke crouched beside her. "Harland cabin. You're safe." She stared at him a moment, as though waiting for the world to stop shifting under her. "You found my letter." He nodded. "Found it on my porch. Didn't see how it got there." A faint tremor moved through her, fear, or maybe memory. "I didn't bring it," she murmured. "I dropped it miles back. I thought the wind took it." Luke exchanged a glance with Willow, the same uneasy question sitting heavy in both their eyes. Then how had it reached his door? Later, when Illyra drifted into a warmer, safer sleep, Luke finally allowed himself to sit back, muscles aching, sweat drying cold on his skin. Willow climbed into his lap, small and quiet. "Papa," she whispered, "do you think someone else found her letter and brought it here?" Luke brushed his thumb over her braid. "Cliffby, storm like that, folks get desperate." But even as he said it, unease threaded through him. No tracks outside, no lantern light, no shape in the storm. Just that letter in the snow, like it had walked to his doorstep by its own will. Luke wasn't a man given to superstition, but sometimes the frontier held mysteries that didn't care for explanations. "All that matters," he finally murmured, "is she's alive." As dawn crept pale and thin across the plains, Illyra woke again, stronger this time, her breath steadier. She watched the flames for a moment before speaking. "I didn't think I'd see another sunrise." Luke was pouring coffee, but he turned toward her. "You would have if you'd stayed hid in that rock overhang." That storm was still building. Her eyes lowered. "I wasn't hiding from the storm." Luke paused. He handed her the mug and waited. She swallowed shakily. "Two men were tracking me. I don't know their names, only that they followed me from the stagecoach stop after I refused to hand over the money I carry." Willow's eyes widened. Luke's jaw tightened. "What kind of money?" Illyra's fingers twisted in the blanket. "Not mine. Belongs to the school trust in Glen Crossing. I was to deliver it before Christmas." She looked up, voice breaking. "I couldn't let them take it." Luke sat slowly, the pieces falling into place. Her torn coat, the battered boots, the desperation in her letter. She hadn't been some lost traveler, she'd been hunted. And whoever those men were, the storm wouldn't stop them forever. He stared at the window where frost crept like silver vines. "They see your tracks before the snow buried them?" he asked. Illyra nodded miserably. "I think so." Willow grabbed Luke's sleeve. "Papa, they ain't comin' here, are they?" Luke wrapped an arm around her shoulders, steady and strong. "If they are," he said quietly, "they'll find a man waitin'." 7. Illyra tried to sit up, panic flashing across her face. "I can't stay here. I won't put you and your daughter in danger. I'll leave before." Luke pressed a hand lightly to her shoulder. "You ain't Levin. You can't ride, can barely stand. And those men catching you in this shape, that ain't happening under my roof." His voice held a finality the frontier itself respected. Willow lifted her chin. "We won't let anyone hurt you," she told Illyra, with the kind of certainty only a child could muster. Something softened in Illyra's expression, gratitude, grief, something deeper. Luke stoked the fire, watching sparks whirl upward. "Storm's breaking," he said, "which means we'll have company before long. I'll set the horses, load the rifles, keep watch." By mid-morning the sky cleared, pale blue stretching over white hills, and that was when Luke saw them, two riders cresting the ridge, dark shapes against the snow. They paused, scanning the valley, then turned toward the Harland cabin. Luke stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand, breath steady despite the churn in his gut. Behind him, through the open door, the fire's glow brushed Illyra's face as she pushed herself upright, fear and resolve warring in her eyes. Willow stood beside her, gripping her small wooden toy horse like it was a weapon, and as the riders drew nearer, Luke felt the storm inside him gather, quiet, fierce, unshakable. Whatever had brought that letter to his doorstep, whatever hand of fate had woven their paths together, it had done so for a reason, and he meant to honor it. He squared his shoulders, jaw set. "This is as far as they go," he muttered, leveling the rifle as hooves thundered closer.